So Wheel of Time is here. Was it worth the wait? So I want to be careful because I'm going to give the first episode a fairly low grade, but I do think the season will be pretty good. The first episode was not very good, so I'm going to be careful. Hopefully the first episode is just kind of a bad start, but there are a lot of good signs that this will be very good. So why is this first one so awful? Well, they did a few things at the very beginning, which really shockingly, I think, don't line up with the books and don't seem to make sense with the canon. Now, I am not a book expert on Wheel of Time, so I'm just learning as I go along, but even for somebody starting out, it didn't sound right. So, but we'll get into that soon enough. What's the basic gist? Well, essentially, Moraine, who is an Aes Sedai, which essentially is a kind of powerful magical being, is gathering the Chosen One, or rather, several Chosen Ones. So the main Chosen One is what's known as the Dragon, or the Chosen One who will destroy the Dark One. But she's also recruiting some other female Aes Sedai. What is weird is, in terms of the canon, usually female Aes Sedai are rare, but she's finding two of them. Already, he's kind of playing with the structure of what we expect in fantasy. So it does keep a lot of the Robert Jordan tone. It is trying to be faithful in many respects. The performances were mostly good. A lot of the camera work and how they tried to visualize this is very puzzling, and it's all over the place in terms of tone and consistency. I realized they had a dilemma of trying to condense a lot of the story, so they're doing things very quickly that, from what I understand, takes a lot longer in terms of the story and were supposed to be twists. There were also just several things that were not inviting. Like, a lot of special effects were fine, but again, right at the very beginning, and this is also a persistent problem I'm having. The dialogue is very lame. For instance, when they're doing a chase scene, they just have like this weird pun about rocks and rocky and things like that. I'm like, that was really stupid. And I realized that we're in a kind of post-apocalyptic future, but it's sort of set in the 17th century too in terms of technology. But there were a few inconsistencies I found in which I was like, that was a little annoying and I think needless. The direction doesn't seem very inspired. It just does very simplistic action reaction shots. It's over melodramatic in places. For instance, when Moraine makes her entrance into the inn, I was like, it was really overdone, and the music is pounding. They really need to use the score much more carefully. It's just pounding and pounding, and the way she talked was very strange. And it seems to be borrowing a lot from Lord of the Rings, the film series. I'm not the biggest fan of the Peter Jackson films, but I have to say the way he did the inn scene with Strider was a lot better. It was still pretty silly, just creating this phony drama with the Nazgul, which does not really appear in the books. But overall, he at least made some creative choices with the lighting and kind of giving it this dark blue feel. Here it's just kind of looks all flat and the same. So visually, it just doesn't pop off. It just feels very kind of like, okay, this is the world. I'm wondering what film technology they use, because it looks like very good cameras, but they don't seem to do very much with the colors, so it's not very creative. It's a little mixed in terms of how it was visually presented. But was the story fine? Well, it's hard to say because they're doing a lot of setup. And if you're totally new to Wheel of Time, you're going to be beyond confused because they use so many terms that are really in the book that you'll be really lost. Just the way they set it up was very confusing, just thrusting you in. I had no problem following the story. It just didn't seem very interesting. It's sort of like, okay, we get introduced to Moraine, to Rand, and the romance with Rand and some of the girls. And we get a basic disposition of them being friends and that this is going to be really a big decision for them to leave with Moraine. And there is a bit of danger involved because the warder, I think, was well cast. He's very handsome and powerful. And the banter with Moraine and the warder, Lan, I thought that was fine. And it's a little cute moment where we actually see some male nudity. I want to be very careful. I have no problem with feminism per se. I'm not like an anti-feminist, but I'm also not pro-feminist. I really like looking at the story first. So I have no issue with feminist science fiction or feminist storytelling or whatever. But it seems already they're tipping their hand towards trying to make it a pro-woman kind of message thing, and it just got really annoying really quickly. Especially because it doesn't seem to line up with the books at all. For instance, Moraine describes what happened with the Dark One, where these arrogant men failed, and we're paying the price. They destroyed the world, they broke it up. That's not what happened. They didn't technically fail, they succeeded. What happened was the Dark One, as far as I understood it, did a counter-strike he corrupted the male side of this essentially magic. So the men, yes, did go crazy and it ended up destroying the world, but it wasn't intentional. Just the beginning narration kind of bugged me. It's the first episode, it's a setup episode. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. It just felt like the dialogue is pretty lame. It's just mostly functional. And even though I thought Rosamund Pike would be the best thing, just sometimes in her scenes, she just acts very strange. Like she has this scene with one of the girls, and just it's very off-putting the way she like talks to her. Like, "Oh, you're a wisdom. Why are you washing things?" It's like, huh? It just felt really tonally inconsistent. Overall, mostly great things. The costumes, the settings, a lot of the special effects were well done. You do get a sense of the grandeur and the majesty of the world. They're trying to be faithful to a lot of what Robert Jordan did. But again, I'm not a big fan of The Wheel of Time, but I would recommend this. But this is not a great introduction. I'm going to have to give this, unfortunately, like a 6.75. It was not terrible, but they do make tons of needless mistakes, and I was just like, hmm. But I'm confident this is just a rocky start, and the rest of the season will be pretty good. But this is like, wow, if this was the first episode, I'd be like, okay, it looks good and pretty, but I don't care. I am recommending seeing it. I am recommending the series, but this was a very rocky start, unfortunately, with Wheel of Time.